Okay, there's just a few finishing touches that I think I'd like to do on our web layout here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I want to put some kind of a rectangle behind my menu items because it's really tough to see them against the graphic or the image of the craters. So what I'm going to do is I'll click on the layer below my text layer, my header layer in my case, and I'll go and create a brand new layer. And I guess you can give this guy a name. You could call him menu box or menu rectangle or menu background or something like that. Call this menu background myself. There we go. And I'm going to switch over to my rectangular marquee tool, this fella right here. And I'll just make a quick selection here. Just kind of drag out my selection here. Now, what you may want to do at this point is you might want to zoom in just a little bit, and you might want to sort of adjust your selection somewhat or manipulate it. You can use a command called transform selection found underneath the select menu. And you might want to use this guy to perhaps make your menu bar a little bit wider or a little bit narrower, this sort of thing. It's entirely up to you, but I think I'm happy with the way my guy looks here. So I just hit the enter key there on my keyboard. And then the next thing that I want to do is I want to fill this selection. I want to fill my marching ants with solid black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the D key on my keyboard. And what that does is that switches my foreground and background colors down at the bottom of the toolbox back to their defaults. So now black is in my foreground color swatch. And I want to fill with black. So I'm going to hold down Option or Alt if you're on the PC side and hit delete. And that should fill in your selection for you. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and deselect, Command D or Control D. Okay, so that looks pretty decent to me. Now, next up, maybe what I'll do is I'll throw on a quick layer style and I'll put a white border or a white outline around my menu bar. So I'll just do this real quick here. I'm going to find my menu background layer, double click on his right-hand side, throw on a stroke here. And I'll be sure to change the stroke color to white. And I'm just zipping along here because we've seen this a number of times already. So I'm just kind of zipping through this. I'll set the thickness of my outline to just 1 pixel. And I'm going to leave my position on the outside. I kind of like actually how it runs off the end of my file there. Of course, if you want to change that to inside, that's perfectly fine. Something like that. But I'm going to go with outside myself. And I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. All right, there we go. That looks great. Now, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit, even though I told you earlier that you should leave your zoom at 100% because that's what the web browser is going to display, right? But I want to get a sense of my overall design. So in those times when I want to get a sense of my overall layout, I'll zoom out a little bit. And I'm looking at my craters and I'm thinking to myself that if the menu bar had a hard enough time showing up against those craters, then the text or the content that I drop onto my web page is going to have a tough time showing up as well. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my craters layer and I'm going to drop down his opacity. So make sure you select your craters layer there. And then I'm actually just going to drag on the word opacity. I'm going to drag to the left just to fade him back a little bit. Now, how far back do you want to go? That's entirely up to you. Maybe I'll fade mine back quite a ways, maybe down to about 30%. Something like that looks good to me. All right. Let's finish things off here. I'm going to switch to my crop tool now. I'll just tap the C key on my keyboard. And remember earlier I gave myself lots and lots of height. So at this point, maybe what I'll do is I'll crop things down. Maybe I want things to be about this size or maybe just a little bit shorter in terms of my overall layout for my website. I'll hit enter to lock that in there. Maybe something like that. That looks pretty cool. So I'm going to leave the topic of layouts inside Photoshop, both print and web, here because from this point forward pretty much everything else should make sense to you. I'm going to show you another web layout that I did in Photoshop many years ago, and I've thrown it into our project files folder so you can use it as a reference if you want. I'm going to pull it up here for you. I'm going to hit Command O and then into my project files folder and then look for web layout complete. He's down towards the bottom of your project files probably. Go ahead and pop him open. This guy right here. I'll just zoom in here. And I created this layout layout in pretty much exactly the same way that you and I have been working on our web layout. So I created this header graphic and I had this logo. I actually created the logo in Illustrator and brought them in as a smart object. You saw how to do that a while back. The menu items here, I did in a slightly different way. They have that drop shadow on them there. I don't know if you can see that or not. I've got a crater background and then some additional items running across the bottom of the layout, which I'm sure you would be fine doing on your own. I don't need to walk you through that. So if you want to take the layout that you and I have created, and if you want to continue building it, go for it. Maybe you want to add on some kind of a footer or something, that's perfectly fine. Or if you want to leave it the way it is, as I'm going to do here, that's perfectly fine as well. But I hope I was able to show you lots and lots in terms of using Photoshop for both print layout and web layout.